Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. This is our weekly webinar here at the Home Furnishings Association, and I'm Mark Schumacher. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of HFA, and happy always to lead a great conversation about information that's going to help you run your business. And I don't think I'm exaggerating here. We get questions, multiple questions a day that always revolve around digital marketing, digital advertising, all of the above, because it has become more and more important to everybody's business. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. I'm going to introduce you to our guest in just a second, but I want to do a little bit of housekeeping here to let you know that first and foremost, this is being recorded. So it's going to become available to you after the fact. We're going to send that link out, but also it's always available at myhfa.org. And the takeaways from today will also be something that we'll be sending out. So do take your notes, but know that we're going to give you some high-level points that you can take with you after the fact. And also, we always like to have something that you can take with you right now and download. And to the right side of your screen, you're going to notice two things. We have what you see there is the digital advertising playbook. I want to thank our friends at NetCertive for supplying that to us. And also there's a digital advertising sort of an audit of your system that is thanks to the folks at Incubata. So make sure within this hour to download that, some great information to take with you. There you have it. So I want to introduce our guests. First of all, I guess you can probably figure out by now, since we have NetCertive on, that we have to have a representative from NetCertive, and we do. We've got their Vice President of Marketing, Erin Martin, is joining us from the lovely state of Colorado. Erin, thank you for joining us today. Ed Camargo, you got it. Ed Camargo is a Managing Director of Incubata. They do an awful lot with metrics and analytics when it comes to this digital side of things, and that's why they've provided that digital advertising audit. So Ed, thank you for being here. Appreciate that. He's from up in New York, and joining us from Florida is Carrie Fletcher. Carrie's the Director of Marketing for Bears. If you're not familiar with Bears, it is a long-standing family furniture business with a number of outlets in Florida. They are a top 100, and she also happens to be an adjunct professor for the University of South Florida in the Tampa area as well. So Carrie, we're happy to have you along, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
What I love about having such an esteemed group is I'll be able to do very little talking, so I'm just going to kind of let you guys go. But we talked before we started about the fact that we just get so many questions related. So I talked about the phone calls, but even the people that have signed up for this webinar have just bombarded us with a lot of great questions. And so what I'm going to try to do here is to get us to sort of take them one piece at a time here. So if I could, I would love to just get things started by asking each of you from your perspective, and Erin, I'll start with you. When it comes to the strategies right now, here we are all these months after the pandemic hit, the focus on, the digital side of the world, and now bouncing back. So what do you think right now are the top strategies that you're seeing out there that are working? What are the things that you're hearing right now?
Yeah, I think with the big shift in all of the market dynamics, one of the big things that I see for the people that are winning and succeeding in the digital world is those that are nimble and being able to build that system, the kind of revenue marketing engine that includes digital advertising to stay going. So for example, just with e-commerce coming more about and the physical retail stores, what system do you have to be able to tie all of those results together, bring all of this data together, so at the end of the day, you can see what's going on and make better decisions. So I think there's a lot of that agility that the marketers need to stay on top of the market and these changes, mixed with the technology and integrating everything. Because at the end of the day, I really think that knowledge is power, and if you can see the whole landscape, then what you need to do from a digital marketing or digital advertising perspective will almost show itself in its own playbook if you're bringing that right data together. So all marketing today is digital, and just making that huge shift, you need the right tools in place to give you the data to make the right decisions.
Well, okay, I mean, and that's a great start, because Ed, the thing I wanted you to jump on there with the metrics and analytics sides of these new strategies is what I hear Erin saying is that this is not, nobody's gonna walk away from this discussion today with, okay, here's the plug and play template, here you go. It sounds like that this digital marketing piece in particular, digital advertising, that you have to be responsive to what's going on, that it's not just a plug and play. Is that pretty true? What are the kind of things you're seeing?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think that there's great tools out there that'll tell you what's happening from a behavioral standpoint with your consumers. I think that the thing that you have to keep in mind, as Aaron said, to be nimble and agile, is essentially what is happening with your consumer day to day. Like it's changing day to day, right? Like right now, the weather's changing in the United States. People are getting outdoors. They're going to their, well, I guess in the past would be summer homes, but now they may be their work from home homes. And so for us, from the standpoint of looking at what the consumer is doing, is how is that happening across the United States? How is it happening? How is it happening culturally? Who's doing what with their discretionary income, and how do we take advantage of that?
Wow, and I've got a lot of follow-up questions, but I want to get around to each of us initially here. Carrie, when I hear that, and you're tasked with marketing for a multi-location retailer, I get the feeling that this day-to-day situation that Ed talks about, this nimbleness they need, that can be different from city to city, store to store. So how are you adapting these digital strategies in your world right now?
Well, and I think everybody's used the words nimble and agile, and that's definitely the words of the day, and certainly, first and foremost in any digital strategies right now. One of the things that I really think is important on the retail side of things is to study your customer and be a complete and total student of that customer, knowing that who she is has changed dramatically in the past year. And so anything that we have assumed, you just have to let go of it, and you have to study who she is now and what, not only who she is demographically, but who she is psychographically. And that's changing, with every day that goes on. So don't be afraid to challenge those assumptions. And I will say that, the movement that we see in people from place to place right now with the Zoom towns, work from home, those types of things, you got to challenge your business cycle assumptions as well. Where summer might be a slow, yeah.
Carrie, do me a favor. For people that don't know, and I don't want to make assumptions here that I know something. Just when you say psychographically, tell people what you mean by that.
What life stage are they in? What is valuable to them? What is it that motivates them? What is it that they respond to? Those types of questions about really, who she is at a much deeper level than her age, sex, and income level.
And to the point of already in this conversation that can be changing and adjusting at any point. That's not a fixed situation. One of those factors could change everything for you. I know that anybody listening to this, and again, our audience of folks who are trying to crack this nut are going to say, okay, well, with what you guys have said, how then? So Aaron, how do I become nimble when it comes to my my digital advertising and digital marketing approach? So how do I do that then?
Yes, I think it's all about where do you start, and you can't boil the ocean. You are not going to, all of a sudden, oh, I need these 5 partners or pieces of tech to integrate, and it's going to happen overnight. So it's almost like waking up and thinking about what is that best next step. So, and just layering it on, like marketing is a foundation in a house that you're building. You got to start with the solid foundation, which, to carry your point, it's all about your customers. Where are they? If you have a limited budget, what's the biggest bang that you think you can get for your buck? It's probably capturing them through search if someone's actually looking for your products and being present there. Okay, you've got that program rolling, and you're being able to see the performance metrics correctly and analyze what's going on. What are you going to layer on next? Maybe it's Facebook. And so I think it's just slowly building in all those different pieces and making sure that as you actually execute all of this, you're bringing it back full circle, and you are slowly building the system so that you're always looking at data in a consistent way, always seeing it through what's truly delivering ROI at the end of the day. And if you just kind of like continue to build slowly, all of a sudden in a year from now, you're going to look back and see how much progress you've made, as opposed to, okay, next month I've got this big initiative and it's going to be great afterwards. It's more just the slow build.
So Ed, let's kind of add on to that for a second. You talked about the day-to-day changes and aspects of this. So playing off what Aaron just said, so it sounds to me like don't throw everything against the wall. Don't go out with, 6 different channels of digital advertising until you've really sort of built your data, as she just mentioned. Is that kind of critical to layer this in carefully and not feel like you got to do all of it, but make sure you're really good at least at maybe 2 or 3 of them?
Yeah, of course. Well, oh, I'm sorry. Was
I'll
that for
just
Evan?
jump
Go
in
ahead.
one thing. I think, Carrie, what you said, it all starts with the customer too. If you can combine those 2 things of knowing your customer really well, in addition to figuring out your next step, it will answer the question for you. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
Yes, how dare you? How dare you do that on this program? No, I'm kidding. This is a conversation, of course. If you got something good, bring it on. If I don't say something when it's right here, it's gone. So Aaron, you're okay. Ed, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is nobody has unlimited budget, right? So Aaron's right. You capture what is the lowest hanging fruit, and what you can capitalize on immediately. To take it a step further, to connect it to some analytics, you might not be able to optimize on a day-by-day basis because some of the things that your consumers are searching for, they're going to do some research on, right? So it might not be immediate like that. So what you have to do is pay attention to what your audience is doing on site and understand what products they're looking at, how long they're looking at them, where do they jump to next, where do you lose them to, where do they come from. All of that stuff will tell you the behavior immediately about the consumer that doesn't necessarily become evident until conversion later, but you can take advantage of it now.
So Carrie, what are you guys doing as far as what are your strategies in approaching this? And it doesn't have to necessarily be what Aaron and Ed just said specifically, but what are your strategies as a retailer right now when it comes to this digital marketplace?
Digital is definitely a very important part of everything that we do. It has to be. I mean, Google is everything. Google is king. So, I mean, you start there. But for me, really looking at any strategies, looking at any, what we're going to do next, that type of thing, I think of everything in terms of the customer funnel. I think of everything, where is she in the funnel? What do I want to do to make her move to the next part of the funnel? And what does she need from me to get there? So if everything is just looked at, it's just that simple. You can really move some strategies along and you can test things and say, hey, no, that didn't work. It didn't move her. Let's step back. But yeah, capture the low hanging fruit, decide which strategies you're going to invest more time and money in and move on.
So how then, I'll throw this out to anybody that wants to jump on this one. How then do you know where the customer is in the funnel? Because obviously it's a key thing to know where they are, but how do we find that out? How does a retailer figure that out through their digital advertising and marketing?
Look at her behavior to see what she's doing. She'll tell you where she is. If she's coming in on
Can you give me an
generic
example?
terms.
Can you give us
Oh,
an example?
absolutely. I can give you 20. Yeah.
Just
If
one
she's,
would be
I like to look at, it's one of my explanations of like the difference between head term searches and long tail searches, things like that. If you've got a customer who's searching for a sleeper sofa, she's pretty high up in the funnel. She's going to come in. You're not going to pay a lot for her to come in, but you really want to entertain her and let her float up there at the top of the funnel with everybody else. If she comes in on a term like memory foam sleeper sofa, she's a little bit further in. She's got a little bit more interest. She's really taken some time to understand what's out there a little bit. But if she comes in on, I was just looking at terms earlier. One was sleeper sofa with storage chaise. This customer is bottom of the funnel. She's ready to buy. You want to spend a little bit more money. If she's on mobile, you want to direct her right to your store. She tells you by what she comes in, what she's looking at, how long she stays. But that search term, whatever she comes in on, tells you a lot.
So Aaron, what I'm hearing Carrie say is that the more detailed their search is, at least for her, an indicator of where they are in the funnel. Is that true for you? And would you add anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about capturing those high intent searches. So like Carrie said, when you see that search term of something very specific as opposed to broad. And so it is really critical to look at your keyword lists and then your negative keyword list to filter out any any high-level searches that you may not want to capture that isn't worth your while right now or is not going to convert as well if you need to be really smart with your ad spend. Another thing you could do to be a little bit smarter in that regard is layering on broader keywords with really focused audience targeting. And so if you had, a more high-end product line, then you could layer on some demographic targeting to further filter that list down. So there's some other ways to slice and get to it, but I think that customer first approach of what exactly they're searching for is one of those best indicators as well.
Well, and now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm trying to connect dots here. It seems to me that I would want perhaps to expand my keywords, because a lot of the standard keywords might not get you that indication as far as where they are in the funnel, like Carrie was talking about. So is it important not to go, I mean, you don't want to overdo it with keywords, but would you say a little more of an expansive vocabulary than just some of the basics?
That's the art and science of it. I think everyone's going to have a different strategy. You've got different budgets. Some people do play that, I'm going for a big net game. I've got the budget to back it up and the content to meet people on different channels as well. And so they could take that approach. Other people, if you're just trying to, work with a really small budget, you do want to stay focused on those high intent keywords like Carrie was talking about.
Okay, and before we, get too far down this, because we got a lot more to cover, but Ed, just in talking a little bit more of that from a strategy standpoint, I mean, I think we're seeing a pretty clear picture here of that the first layer of any strategy has got to be this question of that initial capture, because it sounds like that's going to tell you so much right out of the gates. And do you agree with that? Are there anything you'd add to that as far as some of this keyword question and everything else we're talking about?
No, that sounds right. For me, it's critical to capture those high intent consumers, not just because, of course, they're valuable and you're going to capitalize on them, but also what you're going to learn. So if you dig a little bit deeper past the layer of, they converted already, it turns into a conversation about value, the value of your audience, and then mapping back that value of your audience to where they came from. It could be a specific keyword that just produces so much traffic for you, but essentially they're only buying a very low margin item, versus they're coming from somewhere where the cost of the click is really high, but it turns into a sofa buy 1 out of every 10 times, and you can live with that conversion rate. So you need that data to be able to buy smarter, even at that conversion layer, before you can start to say, I'm going to now amplify and come up the funnel.
Okay, so I think it sounds to me like we've done a really good job here early on here, kind of creating a foundation here for your digital advertising and marketing strategy, that this is where it's got to start. And this was even said just a few minutes ago by Aaron about this being, the search is where it all starts. By the way, we've just blasted through a quarter of this webinar, but I knew this is the kind of information we're going to have for those of you just tuning in. We've got Carrie Fletcher with Bears Furniture. We've got Aaron Martin with NetCertive and Ed Camargo joining us from Incubata. Let's do this. Let's talk for a minute then, because I'd love for us to sort of build this. So, okay, so now we've got this nice basis. We feel like we know, and I love that we're increasing vocabularies here. We know the the psychographics on this thing. We know all these, we know this, we've got these great keywords. We're understanding a little bit more about the funnel. So what's the next building block? Aaron, I'll start with you. So now we've got this is sort of the basis. So if I'm sitting here and I'm trying to figure out what my strategy is and where I'm going to spend and what I'm going to do, what would you think are the next few options for our retailers out there?
Yeah, I mean, Google Shopping Ads is great. That's obviously still in the Google path, but it's beyond just search. I also think that right now a big trend that's helping people is dynamic optimization. And so just being able to have product feeds that can pull out promoting out of stock items right now, and availability is huge. I also think for home furnishings, the really visual nature of Instagram and Facebook make them pretty powerful platforms for having that emotional connection and kind of the branding side that also triggers action. And so the next thing that I always look to after you capture that initial high intent audience is, okay, what other emotional branding a layering of creative in digital channels can you use to reach your audience? So you always need to reach your audience and customer where they are in the journey and through the right digital channel. But I think some of those really kind of almost more creative and branding channels like video are great to look at next and think about what's right for you.
Carrie, what are y'all doing at Bears when you figure out where she is in the funnel? How are you then attacking this more from that digital advertising marketing side of things?
Well, it's been a learning experience for the past few months, but there's such an opportunity in digital to go with a full 360 digital program where you're moving her digitally and, independent of other marketing. So really, again, looking at that funnel, if she's in the top of the funnel and you want her to introduce her to who you are, then your messaging switches to, basic branding messages. When when you move her to the middle, I've been bringing in blogs and things like that that are more relevant to what she's interested in, whatever she's expressed, whatever, I'm segmenting everybody. But it's, she craves information. That's what I've been discovering looking at her behavioral patterns. And so we feed her information. As she gets down toward the bottom, we're a lot more hard hitting. It's a lot more, shop now, buy now. It's, the messaging gets a little bit more aggressive, but I suppose the presence gets more aggressive, but yeah, it's again back to the funnel. What does she need now, and what do I need to give her to get her to react?
And that's where
And
customer journey mapping really comes into play. Like you just want to map it all out. What is their journey? And then just actually drop in the digital touch points that you want or the content along the way.
So map it out from the standpoint that if this is where this customer is right now, then they're going to get this particular digital approach. If they're here, different. So Ed, is that a common? Do you think that's a common solid approach to this? Is to be prepared to respond, but in different ways, and not just have it be a one size fits all?
Yeah. There's a couple of different maps that we usually follow. We have that consumer map, right, where we're trying to understand where along the consumer map the consumer is right now, and how can we change the messaging to get them closer to the next one, which I think we talked about. Another map that we're at the same time following is how much is the media costing during that path itself, right? So we're essentially doing a diminishing returns analysis channel by channel. So we'll say, okay, we've tapped out on brand keywords, we've tapped out on brand plus, and we understand what the return on investment is for those two. Now we're into non-brand PLA shopping, like we're into all of those, but we need to get those very valuable customers within each one of those. And how much is it costing, and where are we at the limit before we start introducing another channel, Facebook remarketing or lookalike audiences or influencer, whatever it is, it has to be looked at sort of in a portfolio return on investment. And all of it is capturing the most return on your investment from the bottom up.
The oh boy, I just I just know that there's a lot of people hearing that and probably thinking it sounds a lot more complicated than they thought. Yet you said the key word here is you're trying to, you're really measuring diminishing returns. So this is all about spending wisely. Carrie, without giving us numbers, how have you all sort of determined how to budget for this? Because it has changed so dramatically in just the last year and a half alone.
It has, I manage it through campaigns, so I definitely manage specific campaigns for specific purposes for specific parts of that funnel. And
Okay.
that helps a lot without, and anybody out there who might be managing their own CPC and PPC campaigns, it's a great way to go about it, is to just say, I'm willing to invest this amount of money in this campaign where I'm going to spend more per customer, and then I'm going to watch and see what happens. So test things, testing things is always a great way to go. If it takes off, even though you're spending maybe 2, 3, 4 times what you would spend on a top of the funnel customer, then you know that you can invest in it a little bit more, and you can watch the prices change and that type of thing. But yeah, managing by campaign rather than managing as a full, just throw all the keywords in a bucket is definitely the way to go about that, and to make sure that you're spending where you want to spend and how much you want to spend.
And one note on testing that I'll add too is you want to make sure that you do have enough budget to cover the time frame that's required for any of the platforms like Google's algorithm to kick in. So there's usually this learning period on their side to be able to establish, kind of kicking up that learning and whether it'll be successful or not. So it's usually not one of those things where you can say, I'm going to go out and test for 3 days and then you can judge success. You need to let it run longer than that.
That's actually super critical. I want to make sure that people understand that if your keyword list is too long and each keyword requires 50 clicks before you know whether it worked or not, and you're on a time frame of, let's say, a month, all of a sudden you just spent a ton of money and you didn't get some sufficient results to know whether it worked or not. And somebody, at a CFO kind of title is asking, what's going on here? Like, we just spent a lot of money. Where's the return on this? When are we going to get it? And now you've dug yourself into a little bit of a hole because you didn't plan out statistical relevance, which is where Aaron is going, ahead of time, and that can kill you. So you have to be very, very smart about that part too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, avoid the CFO call. Avoid the CFO call. We know where that's going to go. No, but this is really, I think, it was certainly going to be one of our big takeaways from today. So, Carrie, I want to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly, because if you manage by campaign versus just deciding I'm going to spend X amount of money on a certain channel, by doing it that way also, and it gets into one of the areas that we get the most questions in, which is that makes it easier to measure, correct? I mean, at the end of the day, if it's via campaign, then I've got some takeaways beyond just the dollars and cents of it. Is that fair?
It's very fair, but it also helps you to measure ROI appropriately for each channel, because the measure of success for each campaign is completely different. If you're in the top of the funnel, click rate is everything. If you're in the bottom of the funnel, we're going to look at something totally different. If we're in the middle of the funnel, we're looking at form fills, we're looking at phone calls, we're looking at that. When we get bottom, since we're not a high e-commerce company, I'm looking at visits to the store locator page. I'm looking at where she exited, and I'm looking at, what she did while she was on my site. And my measure of success is going to be different. But yeah, managing by campaign, or I should say ad group, would be more technical. It's the best takeaway you can have from this is if you're not doing that, do it. It's going to change your life.
So, Ed, let me ask you the question a little bit differently. So what's the best way for a business owner out there to measure success with their digital advertising and marketing? Is it what Carrie's talking about, or is it more than that? How do they, because we always get that question. I mean, I've got that here in probably 10 different, asked 10 different ways, but what's the best way to measure success? How would you answer that?
Oh, yes, it does start with what Carrie's talking about, right? You have to start by measuring it like that. When you start mixing channels, and in a lot of cases, you're going to mix some channels that don't necessarily play friendly with each other, right? You're going to be at a loss to try to give credit to whatever channel ended up selling. In the case where you have stores, you have an advantage there where you can test one store to another and have on-off markets, right? So you can do an A/B test and increase your, let's say, Facebook budget in store A by 50%, keep store B no Facebook budget, and have whatever you normally do in store C. And now you can start actually seeing where the real sales are coming from. And regardless of what the analytics platform there are telling you, you have real truth of sales. Like if you map it back to what happened in that area code, and you're tying it back to the stores. And then what you can do is you can confirm whether your analytics setup is right. And so anytime you have the ability to do that, that's a huge advantage for you to try to connect the two and take it to the next step of understanding how the media is working together.
Yeah, and where I increase spend next time, or what worked out of that campaign. I mean, it's everything that you do, it's clearly is you're building your information base as the lead marketer or whatever it might be for the firm that you work for. I mean, I just get it. So Aaron, as far as that goes, are there certain measurements that you find are the most the most advantageous to have, or what are those things that you want to be definitely walking away having some good knowledge about being able to measure.
Yeah, I definitely think what Ed said about the on-off market testing is huge. We always take those approaches with our different multi-location businesses. I also think about it in terms of the leading and kind of lagging indicators, with the ultimate measurement being ROI, which is lagging. And so then it is going back to, okay, what's measuring into that ultimate success that I can look at now. And so to Carrie's point, if you can look at each campaign and define what success is going to be, then you can connect all of those dots along the way. And so I think the biggest thing in terms of KPIs that I talk about or help people solve is when you're looking at, ROAS and some of the clicks or engagements that are leading into getting your actual return on investment, then how can you also look at that and take into consideration the cost of goods sold, so you're ultimately getting to an ROI view, not just holistically, but being able to see that by campaign or by location or by these different variables. So then it's almost like the ultimate, you've leveled the playing field and you can easily see what's working or what's not. So again, it goes back to, it's almost like, how do you just get these different touch points into a data form to be able to make that calculation? And oftentimes it's just an Excel sheet where you're like, just kind of like got a worksheet together and you're stitching different things and calculations together to get to some back of the napkin math. And then other times you've got like a robust partner or technology set that's helping you do that for you. So it's just there's no right or wrong answer in terms of how you do it, because everyone's going to be at a different stage of sophistication with their digital advertising spend and what they need to be tracking. But as long as you can get those kind of key touch points along the way, that includes leading, like the clicks, and then leads, conversion rates, engagements on the site, all the way down to point of sales, and then true ROI, then you're going to have a pretty good complete picture.
I'm going to kind of go really granular here, because this is an interesting question and you kind of just touched on it, which is why I'm going to go this way. And I want to ask Carrie for you to start on this one. It just says here, I'd like to hear a discussion about the challenge of digital ad conversion attribution. I get where they're going here. They want to, be able to really kind of pin down, is that where this sale truly, came from, or how we kind of brought them through it? Is that, is there anything that you'd like to discuss from that standpoint? Is digital ad conversion attribution, are you able to track a lot of it that way, or is it some of it just kind of anecdotal and you're thinking where it came from?
It depends on who you are and what your business model is. If you do a lot of e-commerce, you have a much cleaner path and a much clearer view of that. With
Sure.
Bears, we don't have a very clear view of that because our conversions happen in store. I mean, you can try programs. Some people have a great success with the geo-framing programs, tag in, specifically. I don't always, sometimes it's just numbers. Sometimes it's just giving you numbers and it's not necessarily giving you an answer sometimes. And I love numbers, so for me to say that is painful. But it's, I still go back to old school marketing rule of threes. It takes, 3 targeted messages for somebody to respond. You're never going to have 100% visibility on what actually brought them into the store. It's just not going to happen. 100%.
Well, and I think, and Ed, I think we know where that question's coming from. That's someone who's just trying to get that one less little nugget to really decide where they're going to spend their money when it comes to their advertising, et cetera. Do you have a response to that? I mean, this person calls it the challenge of attributing those digital ad conversions?
No, it's complicated what she's talking about. You throw in phone calls and you throw in emails, and it becomes even more complicated, right? It's
sure.
The best that you can do is use your common sense. Sometimes there's some great attribution tools out there, and I've used some of the most sophisticated ones, and sometimes they fail you too, and your common sense is what gets you through. So I've been to give you an example. I'm not going to name any names, but a very expensive attribution tool was being used by one of our clients, and it just wasn't telling us what we intuitively knew to be true. And so we understood that there needed to be something wrong. And this is after a couple of months of going back and forth with the technology partner to get it right. It turned out that they just weren't capturing mobile inventory, mobile touches. So right there, that's a big break that you can, from an intuition standpoint, understand, okay, that there was something broken here, something missing. Of course, people are using their mobile phone. They're using it, their mobile device. They're using it probably more than anything else. So you're missing a big part of the picture. And so what I'll say is you can take everything slow. There's some tools out there that are very intelligent that can get you halfway there, and then just use common sense, and you'll most of the time get it right.
Yeah, it's really funny because you know, that one little piece missing, that lack of mobile, skewed. I'm sure in that case you're talking about, skewed every bit of the rest of the data, trying to figure out the attribution. Because without that, everything else is overly inflated or deflated, depending on how you look at it. No, I get it. I mean, this is, you know, it's. I think sometimes you can tell a lot in these questions that people have. You know, we know everybody on this, you know, listening to this understands the importance of digital advertising and digital marketing and this whole digital approach. They understand that. There's nobody that's denying that's where we're at right now. But it still is just not quite something everybody's so comfortable with, that they're still looking for what are those nuggets that are going to help me really know where to spend and how to do things. Aaron, did you want to throw in any other thoughts there about this whole issue of attributing that conversion?
Yeah, I think the other thing that I'd add is there are also, you know, some tools that you can just listen in to store calls with the customer. If they've called in and they're a new lead, and you have your, you know, reps asking, where'd you hear about us? Or just, you know, like asking here or there. I think going back to the customer, there's some tools to be able to do that as well. And I think Ed's dead on that, you know, digital takes a human mind to also filter out the noise. And you can't just, like, you can get overwhelmed with data. And so if you can just, you know, always compile it and look at it more easily and spend less time at Headacheville, and then, you know, kind of parallel that with just qualitative information, talking to the customer. Like, I have a hunch about this trend that I've seen, that, you know, verify. So I think those do need to be used in parallel, and they'll help you really nail if you're onto something or not.
Yeah,
I want to remind people.
just build on
sorry,
that.
good. Go for it.
I think that one thing that she touched on is critical, and it's a lot of the success that we have. We have great analytics tools at Incubeta, and we're really good at using them, right? But every once in a while, our teams become the customer, and they go through the purchase itself, whether that means, you know, taking out their wallets, going through different devices. And what we learn coming out of that reshapes how we end up using that technology. And that, I mean, I can't emphasize it enough. It's gold when you do that.
Wow, I wrote that down because you're right. I mean, be the consumer, travel through this process and to see for yourself, you know, where there might be bumps in the road or whatever it might be. That's a wonderful thing, and but to your point, Ed, that has to be purposeful. You guys don't do that just somebody doesn't stumble on it. You're saying that there's times when you're just like, we got to be the customer sometimes and really look at this from that angle.
Yeah.
That's a huge takeaway. No, that's terrific. I want to remind people, by the way, we're having a great discussion here with Ed Camargo, who's with Incubeta, Aaron Martin with NetCertive, and Carrie Fletcher from Bears Furniture in Florida. So this is one of those questions. This is I'm going to ask you some of the unanswerable questions now. Of course, everybody wants to know, okay, so which one of the channels where should I be putting my money? And I mean, there's just one word questions: Instagram, Facebook advertising, that kind of stuff like this. So Carrie, let me start with you. You know, I know that you're going to say it depends and all that kind of good stuff, but have you had successes? We'd like to find out where you've seen some real good traction.
Well, you know, certainly in the social worlds, knowing your customer, that's another one of those great places where knowing your customer is going to tell you what platform to be on. Our customer is not an Insta customer. It's just one of those things. You know, our customer is a Facebook customer, and so that's where we spend our money. You know, we've tested it, we've tried it, and it's just been really clear on that. But But yeah, for us mostly it's been cross-channel digital. We've done a lot of different things, everything you can possibly think of, and we just focus on what's working the best. That's it.
Well, Aaron, let me jump in there for a second because this is also maybe a somewhat, I mean, maybe it seems like kind of duh to some people, but it might be something that's worth really focusing on here is you don't need to be playing in all the sandboxes. What I love what Carrie just said is they know where their customers are when it comes to the social side of this. So why spend on Instagram if you know your customer's not there? Do you have any words of wisdom there as well as far as
Yeah.
that goes, picking and choosing? Because that gets to our spend question, that gets to our budget question.
Yeah, it all starts with the customer. And what you can do is get a list of your current customers and see what a lookalike audience is, what they call them, people that look like your current ideal customer, what the reach and volume of that type of audience looks like on different platforms. So you can do a little bit of media planning and forecasting to just better understand, outside of just general research, what are the type of people that are on this channel versus this channel. And that'll definitely help guide you of like, oh, okay, this is where my audience is thriving right now. They use Facebook a ton, but not Instagram. So I think those custom audience lists of just starting with your current customer and the lookalikes is a great place for information gathering.
Where do you get those? Where does a retailer get those lists?
That would be their first party data. So your actual
Okay.
customers that, you can even segment them by, we want people that are buying the high margin stuff, and just take those to have your kind of ideal customer set, not just the entire customer set.
Perfect. So you're just saying take a good hard look at your customer base. But Ed, I can just hear people saying, yeah, but I want to grow my customer base. Shouldn't I be throwing the bait and the hook in all these other ponds? Okay, yeah, Carrie, they're doing Facebook, but shouldn't I be spending more in Instagram? How do you respond to that? Do you pull them back from the edge? Do you say, do your testing? How do you mention that? Because a lot of people are like trying to expand, and maybe they think that they're sort of pigeonholed because they're on one particular social media platform.
Yeah, it's what Carrie said initially. Know your customer first. Understand where your customer is and why they're there. How do they consume media? And then you'll expand. Just do it intelligently. You'll understand exactly where to expand to. Nobody's saying don't expand, and we can get very aggressive with expanding, right? It's just
Sure.
Don't throw money away that you don't have to. It's the information is all there for you. The customer tells you how they're interacting with you. They're telling you where they are and what media they're consuming. They're telling you time of day. They're telling you everything. You just need to sit down and look at the data.
Yeah, and we talked about that even out of the gates today. And this conversation is that get really good at the area where your customers are. In other words, you can certainly expand, but you don't know. I mean, Carrie, you don't know if you've truly fully leveraged that Facebook social media channel. You just don't know. You can continue to build on that. It's not just sort of a sedentary situation, right? I mean, you can find ways to expand within that
Absolutely,
area,
yeah.
right?
Build within the channels where she is, because there's nothing worse than having the best message in the world and delivering it to a room where nobody's listening. And so that's the whole point, is you've just got to get into the room where it happens, to quote Hamilton, and we should and then expand as far as you can within that. When you've fished that to death and you're looking for that next blue ocean, then you move on and see what's out there. But you do it in baby steps, like we said earlier, where you're testing a new strategy to see if it's even worth exploring.
And one of those new
Oh,
digital
go ahead.
channels that I will kind of plug in is Connected TV. That audience is, just growing huge and is a new opportunity. There's a lot of marketers that have been doing it for a while, but there's a lot who haven't. And there is a big opportunity to layer that in.
I love OTT.
Yeah, can you share more on why?
Yeah, please. I was just gonna.
And it's under talked about. So I'm glad we can talk about this a little bit. I've been on a lot of these webinars. I don't know that many people really jump into it that much, but But OTT is exciting and it's changing every day, just like the rest of digital marketing. There's so much that's out there, there's so much that's available, and there's so much that's changing. And it's hard to get good information, and it's a hard world to understand. And I gotta say, it's like the wild, wild west out there. You don't know who's giving you what answers and what they really have access to, and if they're primary or if they're secondary or if they're somewhere much further down the line. But if you want a real challenge and you like this kind of thing, definitely dive into the world of OTT, but that's definitely where you've got to be spending some media dollars. There's just literally no two ways about that. With the shift so fast, and that's one of the biggest shifts in the pandemic, pre and post, is just people's reliance on the OTT, CTV, VOD, whatever you want to call it, and everybody has different definitions of those terms, but that is here to stay, and that's someplace that you have to spend money. Do you have to spend, I think HBO Max is releasing at 150 CPM. Do you have to spend that? If you've got that budget, more power to you. I do not, but there's plenty of places to find that customer. You don't have to be everywhere she is, but you have to be where she spends a lot of her time.
Well, and to your point, this is really pandemic driven, because there's a lot of people in this household included where those were not avenues we spent a lot of time traveling down, and now we do. And I see the fruits of this. Ed, can you talk a little bit about that? Because again, Carrie said, it's not necessarily something we've always, we talk a lot about, but boy, it is on the edge right now.
Yep. So OTT is absolutely on fire, specifically CTV within OTT. And so just to break it down and talk about what I'm talking about here, CTV stands for connected TV, right? And what we're talking about here is large screens, long formats, measurable. You don't have anymore the challenge of having to spend $3-4 million to get a campaign going. You can do it for much less. You can be targeted. You can add all of the data that you normally would add to programmatic, and you can turn it on and off whenever you want. You're not locked into you can be locked into a guaranteed deal. There's also that side of it, but you don't have to be, right? And so for us, we've gotten very good at this. We're now finding that $150 CPM in the 20s and 30s for the same inventory, because we're just doing it across so many different clients that we understand now exactly how those waterfalls are working. And it's a waterfall that takes an understanding of the old world of linear TV and how they want to sell, how they want to prioritize, right? Those guys aren't really looking to let go of that Super Bowl inventory. That's still going to be top shelf year round. But there is definitely ways in so that you can win and get those lower CPMs that translate into the ROI that you need. So it is very exciting. There's a lot of tools out there that are helping smaller digital marketers capture that sight, sound, and motion that has only usually been available to linear high spend advertisers. So I think it's a game changer, and Carrie's right. If you have to do it at some point. That's all of the media budgets shifting that way because the audience is consuming that kind of media right now a ton.
And Ed, you said a key thing right there, is you also said that this is something that anybody can tap into. I mean, this can be a single store operator, because of just how granular you can get on this and the distribution on it. This is open to everybody, right? It's not just the bigger players.
Yeah, it is. I mean, let's not get crazy. Like, you still have to have a few $1,000s to do it, right? But we're not talking about the millions of dollars that before you would just be like, I'm going to test with $1 million. No, right? No, now it's become reality. Now you can actually do that, and you can add the layers of data that you never could before, and you can track it. So yeah.
And one
All right, Aaron, jump in. I knew Aaron was going to jump in. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, one creative plug I'll give with that too is if you're thinking about doing video advertising or connected TV and you're going to do a shoot, make sure that you think about all the different channels that you might even want to make a cut video for, because what you run on connected TV or a smaller mobile device or Instagram where you need to have, a quick 6-second video, that's different than your 30-second connected TV spot. So oftentimes I see someone who just takes an old video TV asset and then will try to repurpose it wherever video is distributed. when really you need to think about the medium. And so if we can do that all in the one photo shoot up front and get all those assets shot correctly and planned out, then you won't kind of be jamming just this one asset everywhere.
Yeah, and definitely don't use the same asset everywhere. That's like a major no. But think about, to Erin's point, each medium, each channel is a little bit different. So be super careful to be thinking about, if you're going to run that on Facebook, it's going to start without sound. So captioning that is probably a really good idea, even if you're going to use the same asset, because if what they see in the captioning is interesting enough to them, hopefully they restart the video with sound and you get the full impact of what you've put together. But yeah, you really have to be asking those questions and understanding what's going on within the medium, and make sure that A, the message is right, but B, the presentation is right.
We're just moving through here. This is just a wonderful conversation. I want to get to a couple of other questions here, just because there's always the one question that's predicated on the negative. And if I don't ask one of these, then it just won't be one of our webinars. Here you go. What's the biggest mistake or waste we can do in advertising in the digital world? Let me see. I'm just going to go around the horn here. I'm going to say, Ed, I'll start with you. So what's the biggest mistake? Let's backfill this and say, what's the thing you tell somebody, please don't do when it comes to your digital advertising and marketing?
I'm going to say engage with what's called a black box platform, which essentially means that you're giving your marketing dollars and not really understanding what it is that, what are the levers that are actually producing the performance, and then on top of that, allowing that platform to also be the grader of their homework and tell you that it's working when it's actually not working. I think that is the one thing that over the course of when we onboard clients and we start to audit their programs and start to try to figure out, what can we do to help them immediately, when it's that, and we have to inherit that kind of a program, we see night and day real results, real incremental sales, instead of something that they were just being told.
Okay, Erin?
Yeah, I would say it really goes back to kind of that truth in data and the systems themes that I was talking about, and being able to run a really defined program where you have the full feedback loop of, we're going to try this budget, this channel. I have my feedback loop of how I'm collecting that information down. I'm expecting this. And internally as a team, here's how we're managing the program. Here's the tech stack I'm using, or the roadmap that I'm building to build a stronger revenue system. I just think that, like, the more truth in data we can find whenever you have problems in digital advertising, it comes back to not being able to see a whole picture, or a system or a process that's broken. And so the more that you can establish that correctly up front, using the right tools and the right teams to put it all together, you're just going to set yourself up for success, because you will fall down and make errors along the way. You don't try a digital advertising strategy or a different channel and not make some mistakes. Like, that's going to happen. So it's more about building that system to make sure that, okay, if you fall down for a second, what did we learn? Restart the process.
Carrie, what would you say is the biggest mistake?
I think the biggest mistake that I see is people assuming that all digital is like one bucket, and not understanding that, you have to look at digital like you do the rest of your advertising, any of your linear, that it's multiple channels within a bucket. And I think the big thing that goes along with that is, a lot of people think that if you take a digital partner, you just hand them a budget and tell them to do things. You don't take that level of involvement that you do in your other channels. Sometimes people don't realize that you do need to nurture it. You do need to ask questions. You do need to look at the results, and you do need to question your partners and just collaborate with your partners so that you can get better. It's not an unimportant channel. It's a very important channel, and it needs the same amount of love and care that the other channels that you use do.
The only other question I wanted to get to before we end here, and it's not directly about digital, but it is the thing that has changed so dramatically since the pandemic started. So the question is, should I stop print and radio altogether? So in other words, should I just go fully digital and just say see you later TV, see you later radio? Okay, Carrie, you're the first nodder, so go ahead. You're saying, yeah.
Again, it's where is your customer? If your customer decides that, she's only shopping aisle 7 at the grocery store, then you better be at aisle 7 at the grocery store. Our customers have not shifted all to digital as much as we would like to believe it. Well, and it also depends on who your customer is, but no, there's value to everything that's in there. I definitely think there's room to be cutting some of those other channels down to lower levels than where they were maybe 5 years ago. But every channel's got some validity at this point.
Yeah, I think oftentimes as marketers, sometimes we can be prone to, oh, this has worked for me in the past, I need to do this, or other people are doing this, so I need to do this. And really it's shedding all of those expectations and really just doing what's right with your customer, like Carrie's saying, and not letting those biases affect your own marketing plan, but really looking at where your customer is and what works for you and them.
So the question, I mean, it seems to me like the question shouldn't be, should I stop something? The question is, should you use something? Is it where, like you see, we keep saying, kind of beating the drum here today, is that where my customer is? You know what, if you're in a part of the world or you've got a clientele where, guess what, some print makes sense because it works, then why would you just, you just don't want to say, no, just go totally digital. So Ed, you've got it, regardless if it's all digital or a combination, balance has got to be an important piece of this, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We work hand in hand with offline agencies all the time, and we definitely do not come in and say, no, you just need to give us all this budget. We go back to what I said, it's the diminishing returns conversation and saying, okay, is it working, and is it working as well as what's the hierarchy of what's working? So, and that will dictate where your budget goes. So yeah, that's as much as I would like to say, no, it's all digital now, everybody just come our way. It's really not, and we're fine with that.
I want to just point out, and we mentioned this earlier, that for those of you that are joining us today, we are going to certainly be sending you a link to a copy of this webinar, but also be sending you the key takeaways. But I want to highlight just a couple because I'm a voracious note taker here, and there's just been some things that I just want to make sure that before we leave today that we really kind of talk about it. I love the fact that Carrie talked about truly identifying where your customers are in the funnel, and then having very customized responses to where they are in that process. I like you talked about capturing the high intent searches and making sure that there's some keywords there. So I think that's really, really important. Ed, I know you mentioned, and so did Aaron, about the fact that you've got to start by mapping your customer's journey. Mapping that's going to tell you so much about where they are in the process and how you can reach them. Aaron, you'll start by getting a list of your current customers, really understanding them first, and you can really kind of decide where they're coming from. I love the fact that, Ed, you said you guys make it a point of being a customer. If you're not auditing your own digital advertising and marketing, then you're maybe missing out on what could be some really interesting and maybe even easy ways to smooth things out. So I thought that was absolutely wonderful. And then of course something that we talked about toward the end, investigate OTT. Over the top is something that is more and more on the landscape. Just think about your own habits that you have had in the last year and a half, and your watching of TV and the streaming, the streaming channels, et cetera, and that should tell you everything you know. And nimble, look at it day to day. Those are the other important things, because as Aaron said, and you can take this quote to the bank, you can't boil the ocean.
Right.
You heard it here first. You cannot boil. That's my biggest takeaway. No, listen, we appreciate it. Ed Camargo with Incubator, we appreciate it. Aaron Martin with NetSertive, and Carrie Fletcher with Bears Furniture in Florida. Thank you all for just providing, again, this today is not something about we're going to have all the answers, but if we're not having, beyond this conversations internally at every one of your businesses, then you're missing out. This is something where it's about not only being flexible, not only being agile, but I think the key thing is the intuitive nature of it. You heard all these people on this call that are all about data saying, don't just trust the data blindly. Be intuitive about it and understand where it's all coming from, being a part of. So I thank all of our guests. We appreciate it very, very much. And for all of the rest of you that are joining us, I just want to thank you, and also just hope that you have continued good health and great sales. And we will see you next time around. I'm Mark Schumacher with the Home Furnishings Association. Take care.